Well, good morning. My name is Michelle Bonnywell, and I'm the Director of Children's Ministries here at the Water's Edge. That was just a glimpse of what some of the kids from the Edge and I got to do this last week. Four of us, along with 80 of our new best friends, headed out to Camp Fontenelle for Tree Frog Camp. We got there Monday and left Friday and had an amazing time. Camp is my favorite week of the year. I'm blessed that I get to do this with the kids. We got out there, and the theme for the week was fearless faith. So, all week long, the kids were challenged to show up, to trust, to forgive, to do justice, and to change. And they really did that. Now, as an adult, some of the lessons I got from camp were a little bit different than what the kids got, so I thought I'd share them with you today. I learned that sweat can be really pretty when it forms a tree on your back, that climbing a tree is a wonderful stress reliever. Rope burns really hurt. Standing under the water for anything more than 30 seconds constitutes a shower. Right, Kyle? You can learn a lot about life, faith, and wine tasting during breakfast conversations. Had a 10-year-old explain exactly how all that is done to me. And when you have 13 kids cheering you on, you can do anything. Sometimes you just need a little push to get going off the zip line. After 5 days of 5-minute showers and no hair washing, a hot shower and a warm bed feel like heaven. There's nothing like sleeping outside in a tree boat underneath the night sky. Well, until you wake up and you're covered in mosquitoes. Totally kills the mood. And it doesn't matter if you lose your deodorant on day one, because the stench of bug repellent is so strong that nobody notices whatsoever. But seriously, a lot of what we experienced at camp this week has to do with this week's word, identity. As we arrived at camp, we were all individuals. We came from different schools, different churches, different towns, different family structures, and we had different goals in life. And as the kids got there, it was really apparent that they were trying to figure out where they fit into this. Some of them were timid and held on to mom and dad, and they weren't going to let go. I literally had to pull somebody off their parents and ask them to please run to the parking lot. And one of our first activities that day, just to get to know each other in our family groups, was an identity activity. We got around in a group, and each person in our group was asked to state their name, do an action that identifies them, and give us a word. That's harder than you think it is. The kids thought really hard about this. Now, in my family group, we had 13 kids and then a counselor and myself. And all of us had to do this. And as we went around the group, it was interesting to see how the kids identified themselves. Some of them chose the sports they play. We had swinging Shelby because she played softball. We had batting Benny because he played baseball. Some of the kids chose other activities that they liked. Some of the kids chose labels that people gave them. They were smart. They were creative. One of them went kind of off the beaten path and chose what he thought people wanted him to be, and that was swagalicious. I'm still not quite sure what that means, but he was dead set that's what he was, and of course he wrote it across his name tag. Now, as adults, we're not much different than these kids. We're all trying to figure out what our identity is. And when we look at the things that we're given, the labels we're giving and the titles, as adults, sometimes it's a little easier for us to say, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. But is that really who we are? In my life, I've held several different titles. I'm known for several different things. I'm a mom. I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. I'm a children's pastor. But they're just titles. It's not really who I am. And titles are temporary. Think about all the titles that you've had in your life. I can't count them all on two hands. They're not who I am. Titles that I once held but are no longer true for me, I was a PR executive. I've been a student. I've been a wife. I've been a teacher. And as I look at all of you today, there's a ton of different titles. Some of you guys are teachers. Some of you guys are executives, doctors, lawyers, you name it. These are titles we've all worked hard for, titles we've earned. And for some of us, once we lose these titles, it's devastating. Things change and we just don't know how to cope. Now, add labels to that mix. Labels are those things society places on us, those things that other people identify us with. It may have had to do with something we've done, somewhere we've been. In my lifetime, I've had lots and lots of labels, some of which are not appropriate to stay in this venue. But those aren't who I am either. You want to make it even more complicated? What if we throw race and ethnicity into the mix? Some of us feel that's our identity, our race, our ethnicity. I am half Vietnamese, half Caucasian. I grew up in Fort Smith, Arkansas, in the South. Tell you a little bit about Fort Smith, Arkansas. This town itself is pretty much divided north and south. And you can kind of guess how that division is done. Racial and economical lines. I lived on the south side of town. I went to the predominantly white high school. In fact, I was probably one of 5 minorities in the high school. Now, the Caucasian kids at my school, they didn't accept me because, well, quite frankly, I wasn't Caucasian. But jump over to the north side of town, where I would spend my weekends with my mom's relatives and family and friends, and I didn't fit there either. Because guess what? I wasn't completely Vietnamese. They didn't accept me either, because I was a half white girl. As a kid, when you're searching for your identity, and the two groups that should accept you don't, it's tough. But guess what? None of that was my identity either. You want to make it even more complicated? You guys are going to love me today. What about those groups that we belong to? Those things that we're involved in. Did they define us? Boy Scout? Husker fan? Are those who you are? Do those make up our identity? Go back to my hometown. Last summer was my 20th year high school reunion. In the midst of all the planning and the excitement that went into that, the school board made a huge decision. They decided to change the mascot of the high school, the mascot that had been there for 75 plus years. The mascot was the rebel. The symbols for the school, the Confederate flag, the Confederate soldier. Yeah, there was an uproar. On the Facebook message board for my high school reunion, people were upset, losing their minds. Comments like, how can they do this? They're taking our identity from us. How can they do this? They're taking our memories. They're taking who we are. Now, for the most part, I stay quiet when these arguments happen on Facebook. I'm one of those people who kind of just sits back and watches the train wreck happen. But over and over again, as these people kept talking about, they're taking our identity from us, they're taking their memories, I had to speak up. Because looking back in high school, my identity and my memories had nothing to do with Johnny Reb, had nothing to do with the Confederate flag. My memories are of cruising down Grand Avenue on Friday night. My memories are of sneaking off campus to go have lunch at Taco Bell that was across the street, thinking we wouldn't get caught. If Taco Bell is across the street, guess what? The administration can see you. My memories are of hanging out in the journalism room, getting passes out of my classes so I could spend all day in the journalism room. My memories are Friday Night Lights, shooting videos of the football team, reporting. My memories have nothing to do with Johnny Reb. and my identity had nothing to do with Johnny Reb. These list of labels, titles, are so great that often when these things are stripped from us, or we fail to fit into societal norms, we can't fathom what it is we're going to do or how we'll survive. We will, because you see, those things, they're just titles. They're just labels. We could write them on a piece of paper right now and tear them up, and it wouldn't matter. They don't define who you are. They don't define you as a person. In fact, for many of us, they're just masks of who we really are. Our earthly titles don't define us, because you know what? That definition was written for us before we were even born. God spoke, "Let us make human beings in our image, make them reflecting our nature, so they can be responsible for the fish in the sea and the birds in the air, the cattle, and yes, earth itself, and every animal that moves on the face of the earth." God created human beings. He created them godlike, reflecting God's nature. He created them male and female, and God blessed them. Prosper, reproduce, fill earth, take charge, be responsible for the fish in the sea and the birds in the air, for every living thing that moves on the face of the earth. Now, this passage from Genesis, and I just want to point out, I am using the Message translation of the Bible. Leander talked about it a few weeks ago. For me, it's just a very concise, easy to understand translation. So if you're wondering where that came from, that's it. But this passage sums it up. We were created in the image of God to be a reflection of God's nature. Did you catch that? A reflection of God's nature. Guys, that's our identity. Each and every one of us. We were all created this way. All of us. And because we are created in the image of God, we have a divine capacity to reason, to understand, to care, to love, and to lead. God's plan and purpose for our lives, our identity in Him, has already been determined. And while this identity will be fulfilled in different ways, remember, He created us each uniquely. Our identity as sons and daughters in Christ, the fact that we were all created in His image, is what aligns us. So, if God determined our identity before we were even born, why are we still searching? Why is it we don't accept that? Why is it so many of us go on those journeys to find out who we are? I know after college, that's kind of the thing. You take that gap year to figure out who you are. Guess what? God already determined that. You're a son and daughter of Christ. Now, how do we stop doing that, though? How do we stop searching and realize what it is and who it is that God created us to be? Let's look at the prophet Jeremiah. Now, I know you're all thinking, he's a prophet. What do I have in common with him? Jeremiah didn't want to be a prophet. God created him to be a prophet. That was his identity. That's how he was going to fulfill his legacy. But he didn't want to be a prophet. He was a prophet who warned people of impending disaster. You're not a popular person when you do that. If I spent every time I saw you guys talking to you about the bad that's going to happen and warning you of it, I would not be a popular person. In fact, many of you would turn the other way when you saw me. He pleaded for people to repent and warned them what would happen if they wouldn't. So once again, not a fun thing to do. I'm going to tell you what you're doing wrong. I'm going to tell you that you need to repent. And if you don't, I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen to you. That would not make me a popular person at all. And lastly, he was labeled a traitor by the kings. They were ungodly. They didn't believe in God. So they felt that Jeremiah doing these things and saying these things made him a traitor. A traitor. How would you like that label? How would you like your identity in society to be one of a traitor? I wouldn't like it, especially when I was trying to do the opposite. I was trying to help these people. I was trying to show them love. I was trying to show them that because we're all created in God's image, we are all loved. And I'm trying to show that love to them. Like I said, Jeremiah didn't want to be a prophet. He just didn't. It was a tough job, and it meant he was unpopular. And let's be real, social status, it weighs heavy on us. We want to be liked. We want people to accept us. Now, Jeremiah wasn't alone in this, though. Looking through the Bible, there are a lot of other prophets who didn't want that identity. They didn't want that call. Moses objected that he wasn't eloquent enough. Isaiah had interjected that he was only a man of unclean lips. Jonah, you guys know what Jonah did. God told him to go preach in Nineveh, and he ran the other way. But what all these people had in common is eventually they learned you can't run from God. You can't run from your identity. God has a plan. He has an identity for you. And while it may take us a while, it will be fulfilled. Jeremiah wasn't seeking the office of prophet when the Lord calls him. In Jeremiah chapter 1, verses 5 through 10, we see this. Before I shaped you in the womb, I knew all about you. Before you saw the light of day, I had holy plans for you. A prophet to the nations. That's what I had in mind for you. Now God's saying, look, Jeremiah, you might not like it, but this wasn't something that I just looked at you one day and said, he'd make a good prophet. No. This was planned out for you before you were born. This was planned out for you back when I created everything. I know who you are. I know your strengths. I know your weaknesses. I know what you're capable of. You know why? Because I'm God and you're not. I created you. I created you in my image for a purpose. God knew that Jeremiah's task, his identity, would be to be a prophet to Israel in what seemed a hopeless time. He knew because he created Jeremiah. And just like Jeremiah, our identities were created before we were ever born, before we ever left our mother's womb. God knew what our lives would be about. He knew what our strengths would be, what our limitations would be. He knew who he created us to be. And he created each of us in his image with a specific purpose, a specific identity in mind. When I was in high school, I felt the call into ministry. And I said, no, not me, not good enough. There is no way. You've got it wrong, God. I went into the journalism field instead. I did public relations for Arkansas Children's Hospital, worked for ad agencies. And every time I turned around, I heard this voice. And it was God saying, you feed them. See, when I first heard the call, it was during Vacation Bible School, and I was helping out. I didn't grow up in church. I had just recently started going to youth group with friends, and I got voluntold that I was going to do VBS. So in the midst of listening to these kids get their lesson one evening, they were talking about Jesus feeding the 5,000. And I remember thinking, this is so cool, like, that the kids are getting this. And then that verse came out, you feed them. when Jesus is talking to his disciples. And I just had that moment where I'm like, okay, God's talking to me. But see, the labels that were put on me, to me meant that's not who I was. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't holy enough. And so I went the path I thought my identity was supposed to be. And I did it for years. Was pretty good at it, at least I thought. But I'm proof you can't fight God, because I'm here today. Because I finally said, okay, God, you created me, and I'm supposed to do what it is you created me for. But I said, hold it, Master God. Look at me. I don't know anything. I'm only a boy. And God told me, don't say I'm only a boy. I'll tell you where to go, and you'll go there. I'll tell you what to say, and you'll say it. Don't be afraid of a soul. I'll be right there looking after you. Does that sound familiar? We all make excuses. Yeah, God, this is who you're calling me to be, and this is who you created me to be. But, and you can fill in the blank with all those buts. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm a sinner. I'm broken. I've done this. I've done that. I don't understand. I'm too young. I'm too old. I'm too tall.